There we go. Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller, my co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. Tyler Reddick with an absolutely dominant weekend. Fastest car in practice, fastest car in qualifying, fastest car in the race. He did have some in-race issues that he had to come back from. He only led 77 of the 293 laps. It was Brad Keselowski who led 142 laps that day and won both stages. But Tyler Reddick clearly had the best car, ended up in victory lane. Obviously, the talk going around again is how 2311 is cheating and how they have an advantage. But Tyler Reddick leads the way. He got his fourth win through the first 6 races of the season. Brad Keselowski, as I said, came home second. Ryan Blaney third. Carson Hocevar comes from starting in the back to a fourth-place finish. Austin Cindric rounding out the top 5. Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Chris Buescher, who looked to potentially be on his way to a top 3, maybe even a potential win there for a while. He ended up 9th after some late issues. Eric Jones rounding out the top 10. Now, obviously, Nick, we had a bunch of people talking about how good this new package was going to be with Darlington. We saw it deliver. We saw the tire fall off. And I teased this on Twitter earlier today. I said, I have a hot take. The same people that are talking about how great this race was, and I agree, this was a very good race. I thoroughly enjoyed this. We had different strategies. We had tire fall off. We had the control back in the driver's hands. The actual finishing order and the time off of the leader looked the exact same as Atlanta before they repaved it. And everybody hated Atlanta. And I need to know what the hell's the difference, because to me, these are the exact same races. And now all of a sudden they love it, but they hated the old Atlanta. Make this make sense to me.
The old Atlanta was boring. It was not like this where you saw a lot of movement through the field. It was really static. So there's a lot of fall off, but there wasn't much movement throughout the field of like good drivers coming through the field, bad drivers. I don't know if that was a product of the track itself or having more practice sessions back then. So then the elite cars got dialed in earlier and just started at the front and didn't have as many issues. But Darlington's a harder track to drive. So there's naturally more issues at Darlington, whether we saw the thing with Buescher or getting speeding, sending to the back, or somebody starting in the rear. Yeah. So there's more variance at Darlington than there is at Old Atlanta. Old Atlanta was just boring because you never got into trouble. Nobody ever got into trouble. So the fast guys just started up front. Slow guys started in the back. And there was more separation back then because, everything is so much more equal now. There's a lot more parity in the sport than even 5-6 years ago, when Old Atlanta was there. So it was more of a snooze fest. And this one wasn't quite the same because there was, again, more coming, going, more good drivers having issues going to the back, those kinds of things than there were. And a lot of it comes from this new pit stop or I should say the car, where now you only have to tighten one lug nut and they're trying to do it as fast as possible and they'll screw it up. And all of a sudden Ryan Blaney loses 10 spots on pit road and has to make them back up. In the 5 lug nut days, you could get 3 on tight and it would be fine. You just go. So if you tried to get 5, but you missed 1 or 2, you were okay. So it allowed for more leeway on pit stops. So you didn't see people were getting shuffled back as much on pit stops as well either. Now, of course, it still happened. I'm not saying it didn't ever exist, but to the degree of it and the degree of passing at Darlington is much more daring just because of how the track is. Whereas the passing at Atlanta, when it did happen, it was a much wider track and it wasn't like you were on the edge. Whereas, even though the tires were falling off a lot at Atlanta, they said it was like driving on eggshells, but you weren't on the aerodynamic edge. So with all that space, you were fine. But in Darlington, you don't have as much space. And the quickest way to run a lot of times is near the wall in certain turns. So the passes are a little more daring. You're running a little closer when you are making the passes. I think that's the difference. It's not that there wasn't fall off at Atlanta. I actually think they were fundamentally different races. And so I think that's what the case is, because I thought Old Atlanta was boring as shit. I kept screaming it was boring as shit the last couple of years of that track's existence. It was like the few years before that Atlanta was really good when the tire fall off wasn't so drastic. But I actually have a hot take. My hot take is I thought the tire wear was pretty much about the same as in years past at Darlington.
Okay, I'm with you. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but I'm with you.
So I think a lot of it was just the cars being a little harder to handle made the show, air quote, more exciting. But I thought it was about the same excitement level as past Darlington, and I think we saw it in practice. They didn't 3-stop stage 1 or stage 2. They just 1-stopped it, and then nobody even 2-stopped stage 3. So there were no 2-stoppers, no 3 segments. They just split every stage in half or near half. A lot of that had to do with timing of cautions, but we restarted stage 2 10 laps into the stage. That actually made stage 2 shorter than stage 1 because stage 1 was 90 laps, but you go from the beginning. Stage 2 is 95 laps, but 10 of them, the first 10 are under yellow. So it was actually an 85 lap stage under green. And I think there was an accident at some point, but you get the idea is had it gone green the whole time, it would have only been an 85 lap stage. So you would have had even shorter stints than the first stage. So I just didn't think there was as much fall off as everybody expected. And I think it pretty much compared to years past.
And I think the biggest thing with Darlington is the best car wins. Like Tyler Reddick clearly had the best car. Keselowski was clearly up there, but he even admitted he was not in the same zip code as Reddick, and nobody was. Reddick was in a league of his own, and the best car won the race. But no, the main point that I was making with Atlanta was people complaining about how spread out and how far ahead the leader was when we saw the exact same thing at Darlington. But that's just how these races go, and that is just how it is. But so a couple other noteworthy things here from Darlington. We mentioned last fall that Hendrick Motorsports was not great. They were not great again this week either. Chase Elliott was up there for a bit. William Byron was like a fringe top 10 car all day. Larson was Larson. He ran in top 5 for a little bit. He led some laps, but he was not that dominant car that we typically saw. And then he had issues there at the end. So noteworthy there, Carson Hocevar was the highest running Chevrolet. Daniel Suarez had another really good race, top 10 in both stages, finished 7th, like I said. But a lot of stuff from the last fall we saw transfer over here, including that Hendrick not being great. And even like Joe Gibbs Racing, they weren't as fast as they probably were expected to be.
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously they have the technical alliance with 2311, but Reddick was in his own league, and JGR was good. Actually, I thought Chase Briscoe was really strong. Of course, he had an issue at the end himself. He was probably looking at like a 4th or a 5th place finish without that.
Which Gibbs is great for you.
Gibbs was strong, but Bell and Hamlin, I think, underperformed their typical expectations at Darlington. But yeah, I think Gibbs was fantastic, and Briscoe was really strong. But you're right about Trackhouse. Or not Trackhouse, Spire, Daniel Suarez brain. They looked really good. And, obviously McDowell, again, doing the strategy thing. He always seems to do strategy things. But Hocevar and Suarez have legitimately looked decent in speed the past few races. So I think that's an interesting development for Spire Motorsports. They're looking strong. And, Hocevar was faster than everybody but Tyler Reddick at the end. So that was a really interesting. He did pit a few laps later, but you get the idea. Even before that, he was coming through the field. He had gotten up into the top 5, into the top Chevy, then made his last pit stop a little late and came through the field again on fresher tires than everybody. And, a couple more laps, he passes Blaney for top 3 even. So very interesting with Spire, very interesting with JGR, very interesting, like you said, with Hendrick Motorsports. They weren't good at all. Larson got in the lead through some pit stops early, but really faded, hit the wall or whatever he did, and broke a toe link or something to have the issue there at the end. But Chase Elliott started in the top 10, but just faded through the whole race. Byron, kind of popped up towards the front, like top 5-ish, but was really a back half of the top 10 car. And, Allgaier's Allgaier. I'm not going to fault him for being a rookie at, not technically not a rookie, but a rookie with HMS at Darlington, because obviously he ran full-time seasons before, but essentially a next-gen era rookie in a Hendrick car. So not really going to fault him, but he looked decent running in the mid-20s, but overall not the performance I think Hendrick or JGR wanted.
Yeah, and another team that did not have a performance that they wanted, that was just completely out to lunch all weekend, was Joey Logano in that 22 team. They legitimately got outran by Ty Dillon, which is just noteworthy. And even to that extent, Josh Berry was not as good as people expected. He's been very good at high tire wear tracks. A lot of people were expecting him to be decent here this weekend at Darlington, and they were not very good. He did end up 17th, obviously not as bad as Logano, but Logano was just awful, especially when you compare, Ryan Blaney was a potential race threat. If Reddick had issues, he would have been up there for the win. He finished third. And even Cindric was great in practice, great in the race, eighth in both stages, and then finished fifth at the end. Like, Cindric had a good car. So that was another major takeaway here is when that 22 team does miss their setup to start a weekend, they seem to just not be able to get back on it.
Yeah, I agree. Because you look at practice, like my practice flags metric, Joey Logano was only ahead of Timmy Hill and Ty Dillon. And then he was worse than Ty Dillon in the race, like you said. So really bad. But you talk about like making adjustments. They didn't get the car to where it needed to be. Remember how we always talked about how Kyle Larson would get better and better throughout the races? Mm-hmm. It seems like lately they haven't been able to make adjustments to get him better and better throughout the race, whether it's been Vegas or Darlington or anything.
Yeah. The comment from Coach Howe, which, by the way, shout out to you. Congratulations on the huge DFS day yesterday. Absolutely crushed it with your lineups. I think there was a comment. He did say, massive thank to both of you for all you've taught me. It's been a fun last 10 years. Looking forward to many more. Congratulations on massive DFS day. That was awesome to see your name up there. But yeah, he said, once again, Larson's car seemed to get worse throughout the race.
Yeah, it's just a recurring theme at this point with the 5 car. So I don't know. Is it the new body? Is it some changes within the team, the organization? Larson himself, is he, as he ages, is he doing things different? Or I don't know. It's tough to say, but it seems like in the past when they would adjust in the car and make it better, that's not been happening as of late. But also, big congrats to Matt. He has been following my stuff since literally like my first days at RotoViz, in terms of the first days of NASCAR DFS, like following my stuff at RotoViz, Action, wherever it's been. So very glad he was able to take that down. He had the first through 6th place finishers, which was the optimal lineup. That's happened a few times before in DFS history, but it's pretty rare that the 1 through 6 finishers are the optimal and the tournament. Yeah. And all fit in the one lineup and all are the tournament winners, things like that. So really cool. I think the only difference he had from my qualifying winning lineup, which I also won a world championship qualifier, was he had Blaney in for Larson and he had Cindric in for who was my lower price? Oh yeah, Connor Zilish. So other than that, it was just a 2-for-2 swap. And I was fine. If I was going to mass enter the big tournament, I probably would have ended up on that lineup as well. But I only entered like 5 or so, 10, maybe 10 lineups tops in that tournament. I was mostly focusing on the qualifier, and my lineup was a qualifier winning lineup, which is really cool because if you look at my flags metrics for practice, there's 5 metrics: flags, peak, which is like your best peak speed, not 1 lap time, but I'm using like a best consecutive 3-lap time. Essentially, it's not exactly that. It's a little subtle. I'm not going to give it fully away, but your best flags, which is overall, peak, long, degradation, and consistency. So removing peak from that equation, because I don't really care about peak speed, taking the average of the other 4, the top 6 in the average of the other 4 added up to exactly 50,000. And so that was my lineup. I just set it as that and it crushed.
Yeah. So we did get a comment here. Well, one, flags crushed it again, but then I wish they would do away with group practices. I can't figure out who's for real. You know what? That's what Nick's flags is for. It adjusts based on the groups and compares them decently enough or well enough to make that distinction. Like you said, they absolutely killed it.
It's an advantage. It's an advantage to have the group practices because people that can't adjust for it aren't going to have as strong of a time there. So that's literally what my flags metric does. It group adjusts things, and it knows how much to adjust those groups based off of the lap by lap tracking of the trajectories of the first group and the second group. So like if one group starts with a brand new green track, they're going to have super fast speeds, but then they're going to fall off pretty hard. Whereas the second group is going to have more gradual fall off, but slower early speeds. It's going to be able to understand those nuances. And it'll also take in the strengths of the group. Typically, group 2 is made up of stronger drivers. Group 1 made up of weaker drivers. So it knows, well, not all of that difference is track position, or maybe it's, or I should say groups, or maybe more of it than expected is because, right? So if there's no difference between the two groups at all, let's say there's no difference, but Group 2 is way stronger than Group 1, we know actually there was a track condition difference. You have to adjust for that because Group 2 shouldn't be equal to Group 1. Whereas if Group 1 was way faster, and yeah, they had stronger cars, but not that much stronger, then you adjust Group 2 downward. So sometimes you have to adjust Group 2 upward, sometimes you adjust it downward, but it's all understandable based off the strength of the groups and the trajectories of the lap times between Group 1 and Group 2.
Yeah, so if you don't have Action Pro, I think that's where Flags is posted. It's worth every single penny to get that. You just go back after the race and compare. This is a great race to look back at who had the best cars in practice. It was the same people that
over 4 million pennies to Matt Howard.
Yeah, exactly. Right? There we go.
42,000 is what, 4.2 million pennies.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me see here. Any other guys stand out to you from Darlington? I'm still pissed off. I think Bubba Wallace had a great car.
Yeah.
That was my biggest bet of the weekend, was top 10 for him. And of course he had his issues. Set the fastest lap of the race and was running top 5 until that. That's just it sucks. It's a bad beat on my part, but that's how things go.
I'll say this: Ryan Preece, he was out to lunch in practice, and yet, even though he was out to lunch in practice, in terms of, he felt like the front was driving like the back, and the back was driving like the front. They mentioned that like 8 million times on TV. It was getting obnoxious. He actually was still a top half flags driver, just in the actual flags metric itself. And so I knew if they were like to fix that car a little bit, he was going to be pretty strong. And he did run inside the top 10 at times. I think maybe ran at certain times a little better than he actually had car, and then faded to 13th, which I thought was about fair for him. But look at his last 5 race results: 9th, 8th, 13th, 11th, 13th. I mean, that is consistency from Ryan Preece.
Yeah. And just RFK is not, I don't think enough people are talking about how strong of a start of the season that RFK has, but Preece is definitely there, and he's picking up where he left off last year. I mean, the guy was like, it didn't get enough attention last year, I don't think, of how consistent he was, especially because they had their qualifying issues. Like, they sucked at qualifying last year. Yeah. They've improved it a little bit this year. So now, yeah, the results are coming. Like I said, RFK is there. RFK right now and 2311, after relative down years last year, are right back there.
Oh, yeah. And
not to mention the RFK cars, their paint schemes this last weekend. Holy shit.
I will say it was one refreshing thing was not having throwback weekend. I actually enjoyed that, but it was cool that they did the Greg Biffle tribute. Carson Osvar, I think, did a Dale Earnhardt throwback scheme. So there's still a couple, but I'm actually really glad they didn't make a big deal out of throwback schemes, because it just got to be too much. And then we were throwing back to like 8 years ago, 6 years ago. And I'm like, what? Yeah, we're not even throwing back to things that need to be thrown back to anymore. It was getting kind of silly. So, but yeah, those schemes were really cool. And also let's talk about Chris Buescher, right? He just completed the 69 challenge. So back-to-back 69 challenge completers. Yeah. But it was actually an unfortunate 9th place for him. He had one of the strongest cars through the mid portion of that race. Also stayed out and ended up holding the lead. So, it shows clean air helps, but also they made a big deal of being eight laps on tires difference. It was like 1.5 green flag laps on tires, right? But they count the caution laps as 8 laps different on tires, and they're making a big deal out of it on TV. I'm like, they ran like 1 lap and then somebody spun out in the 2nd lap of that restart, and they're acting like it's a huge deal. I thought it was a great call for them to stay out. And Daniel Suarez stayed out, and somebody else did. I forget who, that ended up staying up in the top 3. And a few of the other stay outs, like Austin Dillon, Michael McDowell, ended up fading, but they also didn't have as good cars. So it was interesting that, 1.5 lap old tires wasn't a massive disadvantage for those guys, especially having the clean air that they had. But yeah, he had a strong day, and it's interesting because he and Tyler Reddick had that issue a couple years ago, battling for a win, and kind of had I wouldn't say heated, but emotional discussion on pit road after the race from Buescher, telling him about how Reddick may have cost him a spot in the playoffs, and then this year they get together again, and it looks like, from just first view, it's like, wow, Reddick just dumped him. But Buescher then admits like, no, we were trying something strategic to not let people know when we were coming to pit road. We came last second. I didn't put my hand out the window. That's on me. So it's kind of interesting to see that. And that kind of, I wouldn't say ruined his day, but it certainly knocked him out of the top 3 and, into that back half of the top 10. But I also just didn't think he closed as strong. The car just wasn't as good in that last stint.
Yeah. Which was annoying. I mean, I'm glad he finished top 10 because that was my outside of Briscoe, the bet that we made on air last week. Buescher top 10 was my early bet of the week. And then my race day ad was him over Gibbs, which that just pissed me off. But anyway, anything else that you have from Darlington?
Not really. I mean, look at what happened at Darlington. It was the same guys. Your Keselowski, he's been strong at Darlington in the next gen. Your Briscoe, he was really strong, especially as he got more and more track position. Tyler Reddick, we know, has always been strong here, right? It's same guys. Now, obviously, HMS maybe taking a little bit of a slide back, but of the teams that haven't slid back a little bit, it was the same guys. And even Carson Hocevar, strong track history here. Eric Jones finishing 10th despite getting spun out at one point by Denny Hamlin. A lot of the same guys. Now, there were struggles. AJ Allmendinger notably not good, and he's been good here in the past. And I noted in my flag stuff, I talked about him in my DFS write-up. I was like, you can use him, but the big alert for me there on AJ Allmendinger, really bad tire degradation. He had one of the worst in the field in practice in terms of tire degradation. And then like you mentioned, Josh Berry, not horrible, but not good, just kind of middle of the road. But for me, a lot of track history. And when I see somebody popping in flags, like Carson Hocevar was popping in flags in pretty much every single metric. Again, he was a top 5 car for me in the average of the 4, what I would consider main flag metrics. When I see somebody popping like that, and he has that track history, that's why I laddered Carson Hocevar, top 10, top 5, top 3 to win, top Chevy, win his group, all of that stuff. And I'm glad most of that hit, and was a very clear tournament play for me in DFS.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, we'll talk about Martinsville and Ryan Preece heading forward, but I can't get over this last part. Ryan Blaney's pit crew. What, I don't understand, and I tweeted this out during the race. I said, Ryan Blaney gets a lot of hate for how much he bitches. I don't think he bitches enough for how god-awful this pit crew is. It is embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, he gets a lot of hate for bitching a lot, but that's because he's bitching about things that, it's just like racing. Like, oh, you raced me hard. Well, you race other drivers hard, and yet you don't want them bitching about you. So, that's where he gets the hate. But absolutely, he has every right to bitch about his pit crew shafting him, because they've done it time again. And this time he had to stop in Austin Cindric's box to get a nut tightened. And it's just unacceptable from Blaney's pit crew to be doing this again and again and again. They need to make some changes, honestly, because it's not working, whatever's going on there. You have that happen at Martinsville. It's going to be really hard to get your track position back. I know Blaney's amazing there, especially in the long run. You have it happen at Martinsville, it's going to be pretty hard to get your track position back there.
Yeah, and it's just, like I said, it's embarrassing, and it's to the point where, you remember back in the day when, and even now we get it a lot, but Denny Hamlin and his speeding, this is even worse. I feel like it's almost expected every week to know that either Blaney's going to have a slow pit stop or something's going to go wrong. And it's just crazy that a top tier organization would be like that.
Yeah. And again, he's lucky it was Darlington, or in Kyle Kirkwood's case, he was lucky it was Arlington, where you could pass and have a really good car and you could come through the field, because Kyle Kirkwood had all those pit issues at Arlington and then won the race. Blaney's lucky it happened at Darlington, which is one of the tracks it's still hard to pass, but you still can, especially with the tire wear difference and the skill difference, the skill gap at Darlington can certainly be to your favor as well. And we know Blaney's gotten much more skilled at Darlington over the past few years.
For sure. But moving on to the point standings, Ryan Blaney, speaking of him, he is now second in points after Bubba's bad finish. Bubba's still leading the way with stage points, and he did get some stage points before his issue on Sunday. But Tyler Reddick, of course, at the top of the points, 95-point advantage over second place Ryan Blaney. Bubba, top 3, as I said. Then it goes Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott. William Byron actually moved up 2 spots to 6th, as did Buescher to 7th. Christopher Bell, who was kind of out to lunch all weekend, fell back to 8th. Keselowski and Larson rounding out the top 10. And as we talked about last week with these point standings, everything's pretty much shaking up as we expected. SVG did have a decent race by the end of it at Darlington. He moves up a spot to 15th. Logano's awful race puts him down to 16th, so he is now the cut line. But Hocevar, Suarez, SVG, Logano, those are the final 4 in. Priest is at 12th. Ty Gibbs 11th. Obviously we talked last week, guys that we expect to move up, guys like Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe. We expect them to eventually get there, maybe even an Austin Cindric. But the points, as I said, definitely shaking up as we expected.
Yeah, I think so. And real quick, you mentioned Christopher Bell out to lunch at Darlington. 2 things before we go back to these point standings. First of all, how did you enjoy watching the race at Circa?
It was awesome. I wasn't actually in the sportsbook portion of it for that long. There were some open seats there, and the race was on, but I didn't want to mess around, and I didn't know if they were for sure open seats or not, so I didn't go down there and check. Gotcha. So I just sat up at the bar and watched it. Yep. Nice. But that was fine. It was good, and it wasn't too rowdy with the basketball crowd. So I enjoyed it. I love Circa. I gambled way too much there.
Nice. And I was going to say, shout outs to Circa for doing top 10 yes no's, because I took Christopher Bell no. Now, I don't track those in the Action app, the no sides or anything like that. And typically I don't even track the yeses that I take at Circa, because Circa's their own beast, right? They're not one of the 6 or whatever main books, your DraftKings, FanDuel's, The Score, BetMGM, Bet365, Caesars. They're not those books where they all kind of herd to the same number. Circa is its own shit because it's its own thing. So very often the top 10 lines you can get at Circa. You can't really get anywhere else. So I'm not tracking those in the Action app because I know most people can't get them anyway. Sometimes I'll post them in Discord for people that do have access, are in a Circa state. But shout out to them for posting top 10 yes no's, because I hit Christopher Bell no and hit Keselowski and Gibbs yes. Those are the only 3 top 10 bets I made, and they had some nice attractive prices in all 3 of those. So yeah, I love Circa. I love to do in the top 10 yes no's, but it's been beatable so far early in the season that they've been doing these, whether it was the super speedway races or even Vegas or Darlington. They've had beatable top 10 lines so far. So if you're in a Circa state, look out for that. But going back to the point standings, it's interesting because I think really the only 2 guys outside the top 16 that we'd expect to be inside the top 16 are Ross Chastain and Chase Briscoe, as you mentioned. But are we even sure we expect Ross Chastain to be at this point?
That's a very good point, because, I know I mentioned it last year. He's kind of plateaued, and if not taking a little step back.
Well, and Trackhouse has taken a step back.
Yes. And how many times this year has SVG been the highest finishing Trackhouse car? He was the highest finishing Trackhouse car at Darlington.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, we always know Darlington's hard on rookies, but SVG is no longer a rookie. But also shout out to Connor Zilic. He had a good rookie race at Darlington, finishing 18th and started 32nd. So he came through the field. He was one that was popping in my practice data. So, the fact that Ross just kind of ran around those 2 at the end of the race says all you need to know. He's plateaued, but also it feels like Trackhouse is a step behind. But of course, so is HMS a step behind where they've been. Spire's the Chevy team that has gotten ahead. And, it was looking like RCR was going to have a really strong weekend, but Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon didn't really have great weekends. But as far as the point standings, I'm not sure Ross should even be in the top 16 if he's not having a result at Darlington, which theoretically has been one of his better tracks in the past. What's going to happen with his less good tracks?
Right. No, as I said, SVG, highest finishing Trackhouse car at Darlington. He was also the highest finishing Trackhouse car at Phoenix a few weeks ago. But yeah, I think one thing with Trackhouse is it might be kind of like what we saw with 2311, where they expanded and they're not used to it yet. And it, as we've seen with a lot of organizations, it takes about a year, and then you throw in, maybe Ross has hit something where he's not getting to that next level, it could be noteworthy. So yeah, that's one guy that I honestly would not be surprised if he missed on the playoffs this year at all.
And also shout outs to Riley Herbst. He was running honestly
Yes.
top 12. Honestly, he was
Yes.
running top 12 for a
legitimately
lot of that race.
all race.
Yeah, and unfortunate incident there. Got dumped by Connor Zilich, which spun him into the inside wall. But 23-11 looked really good. And that's what you're talking about, though, as far as like the overall point standings and where these teams and drivers, air quote, should be. 23-11 should be near the top. Trackhouse should be struggling to make the playoffs right now. Like you said, they have Shane Van Gisbergen in 15th. A lot of that comes from, a super speedway race at Atlanta and Coda. So when we hit this big oval stretch, we talked about it. Once we get through Kansas, where will SVG be? That's an important thing to note. But I don't know if Ross should be a top 16. And obviously Zilich has had some really bad luck to start the year, but he's not been a top 16 car in any of these races outside of, again, Coda, where he was a top 3 or 4 car. So who should be in this top 16? I mean, pretty much everybody there except SVG arguably, or Suarez arguably, and then pop in Chase Briscoe instead.
I agree. Here's a question for you, kind of not really off topic, but kind of. Who's your biggest surprise, good or bad, 6 races into the year?
Oh, it's got to be Daniel Suarez. Good on the good side, right? I mean, the dude is sitting 14th in points in a Spire car. We've always said how he was the worst driver in his team for Trackhouse. He was the worst driver in his team at Stewart House Racing. He was the worst driver on his team at Joe Gibbs Racing. He hasn't been the worst driver on his team so far this year. In fact, he's arguably been the best. Now, I think obviously as the season goes on, cream will rise to the top, but we know Hocevar has wide variance as well. He can have a lot of downside. But I think Daniel Suarez sitting 14th in points with a really strong Darlington performance. He was really good at a couple of these other races that he didn't get good results in. I think Coda was one of them. I don't remember at Phoenix, but I felt like he was pretty good. Vegas, similarly. Like, he's been consistently good. He hasn't been amazing, but he's been consistently good to even very good, which I think is a big surprise. And then I think as far as disappointments, I don't know. I mean, Josh Berry's sitting 32nd in points, but he's one of those where it's like he has some upside at certain tracks, and if he doesn't hit it, he's going to be struggling because Wood Brothers Racing, yeah, they have the Penske Alliance, but they're just not at the same Penske level. They've always been that way, even when Blaney was with them. So if Berry is not hitting it on his elite tracks, there's going to be problems there for him, and I think that's what's happened so far this year.
I agree with both of those, and those were going to be obviously the obvious surprise is Tyler Reddick winning 4 of the first 6 races.
Yes,
crazy, but
insane.
But yeah, I agree with you, Suarez and Josh Berry. Now, here's a good question from Andrew: can Busch be considered a disappointment? 0 top 10s through the first 6 races of the year. He's not awful in points. He's sitting 23rd, but yeah, I mean they're also not very good, but am I surprised that they're not good? No. Kyle Busch is obviously on the back end of his career. RCR, we all know, is not good. Like, RCR is not good as an organization. They might have a few good races here and there, like Richmond last year with Austin Dillon winning it, but they are not a consistent top 10 contender by any means, especially now with this next gen car getting a few more years in. It's separating the top teams from the RCRs. So no, I don't consider Busch a disappointment. Am I surprised he doesn't have a single top 10 so far? Yes, but I wouldn't fully consider him a disappointment.
I agree. And look at his trajectory over his time at RCR. 14th in points. He had 2 wins, so he made the playoffs, but then he finished in the playoffs essentially 3rd worst out of the teams that made the playoffs. And I think that year, wasn't it like one of them was like Harrison Burton or something, so it doesn't even count? No, it was Ricky Stenhouse Jr., but like that almost doesn't even count. And Michael McDowell. So essentially he finished the worst of like the real teams. And then 20th in 2024, 21st in 2025. So that trajectory puts him right around 23rd this year. Am I surprised? Not at all.
All right, here's a good comment. My biggest disappointment so far from Scott is Hendrick as a whole.
Yes.
You know what? That's a good point too, because you look at top 5 finishes. William Byron has 1. Kyle Larson has 1. Chase Elliott has 2. Obviously, Alex Bowman's had his issues. He has 0. but these are the top guys in this entire sport not finishing top 5.
Yeah. To be fair, Ryan Blaney only has 2, and he's second in points. But it's not just top 5s we got to look at, but just as a whole, they're sitting 5th, 6th, and 10th in the standings, the 3 healthy HMS drivers. And you look at this point last year, they were probably 1st, 2nd, and 4th or something. I remember something like that. And even Alex Bowman was like 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th or something. So they're just not having the kind of start to the season that they had last year and even in recent years. But this happens with them. This happens with them. Like the first year of the next gen car, I think it was, or the second, they go through phases and cycles. You get a new body or whatever, and they'll have a little bit of a down year, and then they'll figure it out later in the season. And we always talk about that 10 to 15 race range. Will they flip it on? That's a big question, because they're also notorious for going through the summer lull. So if they flip it on but then hit their lull, they're not really flipping it on. But I do expect them to close the year strong as they figure out more about this car, this new Chevy body, I should say.
And I'd say the biggest thing with Hendrick is, they're not like so far off. They're not like a Joey Logano, like as we saw at Darlington this last week. They are just like outside of Chase Elliott at the end of Las Vegas. Like at that point, we could have saw him win, but we haven't really talked about Hendrick being like the guys to beat. Like Hendrick's going to win this weekend. It's been the Toyotas to start this year. And like you said, and as we always say every year, Charlotte's going to be the testing point. If they get better at Charlotte, that's going to be, but as you said, that's the time. The summer is when they typically get a little worse, Hendrick as a whole. So that's going to be one big thing, I think, this year. That's going to be a telltale sign for Hendrick Motorsports.
Absolutely. And again, I'm looking towards the playoffs. Once they reach the playoffs, they need to be firing on all cylinders.
Oh, yeah.
You can have your summer doldrums. Yeah. You can have your early season, figuring out the new car. They got to turn it off come the playoffs, because right now the year isn't going the way they wanted. Kyle Larson has not been dominating. I mean, he has 0 stage wins. He has 0 races leading the most laps. Chase Elliott, 0 race wins, 0 stages, 0 races leading the most laps. Only William Byron has a stage win, but he has no races leading the most laps. Like, that's not where Hendrick Motorsports expects to be.
And, another place that is going to be a good telltale sign for Hendrick and whether they are just off to start this year is this weekend at Martinsville. They've won 3 of the last 6 here. Byron's won 2, Larson's won 1. Chase Elliott's always a contender here. This is going to be a big weekend for them. Is Cindric getting better? That's a good question.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's taken him a while, but I think if your team Penske, like I think last year and even definitely the year before, we could have easily said there's no reason for them to keep Cindric. It's just because his dad. Right now, I think if you're Team Penske, there's the rumors going around that Blaney could be a free agent. I think Logano might be getting toward the end of his career. I think you have to build around Cindric with the way and improvements that he's showing.
Yeah, I agree. And I've always been on the Cindric kind of needs to be on the hot seat train. Mm-hmm. And I thought this was the prove it year, and he's been fine. Obviously, he's only sitting 21st in the standings, but he's been better than he's sitting in the standings. Some bad luck at Phoenix, some bad luck at Atlanta, 32nd at COTA, but I'm sure he ran better than 32nd. I don't have the data in front of me. He was probably a mid-upper pack car, if I remember from COTA. It's a lot of bad results, but the speed, the consistency has been much more improved. And then you look this past weekend at Darlington. I mean, I wrote him up legitimately as him and Hocevar as the 2 aggressive plays in the 6 to 8K range for DraftKings for DFS. And turns out he actually ended up even in the optimal lineup because he finished in the top 6 there. So it was both Hocevar and Cindric, the double aggressive plays that got you there. And again, the reason I got on Cindric there was because of flags. He was 5th in flags in practice. He was number 1 in peak speed, which isn't super major for me, but he was 6th in long run. He had some degradation, but they figured it out over the weekend, and he was really consistent. The consistency is skewed by Timmy Hill, where the speed consistency means everybody else was just not consistent because he only ran 2 real laps in practice. But the quantile consistency. So where do you rank each consistency lap by lap? Which brings everything to a more normal scale. Austin Cindric was in the 63rd percentile, quintile, whatever you want to call it. So he was, certainly quite consistent as well, and it showed in the race.
Anything else from Darlington or from Darlington and the point standings before we move on to Martinsville?
Let's see. My hot take that Cody Ware was going to finish ahead of Ty Dillon in points is not looking so good. But Ty Dillon didn't look great this weekend either. Cody Ware started it off like 4 laps down, like right off the bat. I don't know what happened to them. But in practice, Ware was faster than Ty Dillon.
Looking here, Cole Custer's another one that I kind of expected a little bit of improvement from, but I think that also has to go with the Chevy new body thing.
Yeah, I think both of those can be chalked up to Chevy new body and also just being shit boxes and also just not being amazing race car drivers. But I do think we both expect a little more out of those guys. But I think, like I said, Cody Ware was faster than Ty Dillon in practice. I'm really worried about Colleague. They were super slow this weekend, Allmendinger as well. And they're not getting that support because of their whole Dodge thing going on with trucks. They're not getting the Chevy support. They don't have the RCR Alliance anymore. So I don't think it's impossible for Cody Ware to finish ahead of Ty Dillon in the standings, but it's not looking great right now. They just need to avoid whatever put them 4 laps down right off the bat.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. I mean, I feel like we see it. I remember, was it Charlotte last year where we had the shitbox special? Like Yaley versus Ware or something like that.
Yeah.
Those lower teams sometimes run into those issues. But
by the way, talking about this offseason, you mentioned like a potential Blaney free agent rumor. Just looking ahead to silly season, I'm really thinking about
things up.
Well, I'm thinking about this. Like if Legacy is getting a third car, Jimmy Johnson said they'll have 3 chartered cars next year. Where's that coming from? And what's happening? There was a Legacy Rick Ware lawsuit. Is Rick Ware getting their charter back from RFK? What is RFK going to go down to 2 teams? What is going on with all that stuff? I'm not really sure.
I haven't heard anything about that. I think the last rumor I saw with the Legacy thing was that Herbst would go to Legacy and then that would open up a seat for Heim. I feel like I saw that somewhere, but I don't know, because which team would be losing a charter, right?
Yeah.
If Legacy gets one.
All very confusing. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But I still think Herb stays at 2311 and maybe Heim goes to Legacy as some kind of loan deal, because again, that money that Herbst brings in is so nice for 2311.
Yeah, that's a big thing to overcome. But man, one last thing before we move on to Martinsville. Third most fastest laps yesterday was AJ Allmendinger, which, we see that at Darlington from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
A guy gets a little off strategy on his pit stops and he, just picks
way
up
off strategy. Yeah.
It just happens. It's just annoying when it's someone like that. But yeah, Allmendinger was not good, even though he did put up a bunch of fastest laps yesterday.
Yeah. And the good thing is my flags will catch that. It'll realize he had an extra, fresh set of tires and was off sequence. And so it'll adjust for all that. So he'll get penalized for being super fast because he had a mega advantage.
Mm-hmm. All right. We are on to Martinsville, though. The paperclip, one of the, historically over the last few years, one of the more boring races of the year, I would say. Not that great of racing here at Martinsville, especially in the spring. It's been a hell of a time trying to get a good race there. But we have seen some good stuff in the fall, and we've seen partially a lot of it is because of Ryan Blaney. He started last fall. He started 31st, anytime someone like that starts that deep in the field and you get to watch him work through traffic, it's awesome. He ended up finishing second. He led 177 laps, but it was William Byron, who is the most recent winner here, started from the pole, led over 300 laps. In the spring last year, it was Denny Hamlin, went to victory lane, led 274 laps. So you see kind of a trend here. You see one guy leading a shit ton of laps at Martinsville, which obviously it's a half mile, paperclip oval. Before that, it was Blaney again in victory lane. And then spring of 2024, it was William Byron after, Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and Joey Logano led a whole bunch of laps that day. But it was Byron at the end after he started 18th. I was at that race. I remember it. I had Reddick to not finish top 10. And thanks to that final restart, he did. And that's annoying. But yeah, Martinsville I think this is also, like I said, going to be a good test with Hendrick to see how off they may be, because this has been a great track for them over the last few years. But also I want to see if Tyler Reddick comes back down to earth, because he is not good at Martinsville. And when I say not good, I'm saying back half of the top 10 on his best day. He's not very good at this racetrack. So if that team has picked up and taken to another level, I think we're going to see it this weekend. And looking at the early odds, I already know for a fact I'm probably going to be betting Tyler Reddick matchups on the other side, because they are overvaluing Reddick. These sports books are already.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Tyler Reddick is now year 7 of his full-time career. And Kyle Larson, year 7 of his full-time career. In Martinsville, he had finished – he was with Ganassi for the first 6 years, but he finished 27th, 30th. He didn't end up participating in one race because he was replaced by Regan Smith for something. I don't remember what happened. Finished 19th. Then he finished 3rd. But then he finished 14th. I'm getting to a point here. 17th, 37th, 16th, 37th, 18th, 9th, right? Those first 6 years, rough. Year 7, 5th at Martinsville, and then 14th. But, better performances. And then finally, 8th year, he breaks through, finishes 2nd at Martinsville, and then 9th year, he wins at Martinsville. So we're getting that point where Tyler Reddick could theoretically be breaking through at Martinsville. The performances have gotten marginally better, like you said, that he's really at best been a back half of the top 10. But with the way 2311's performing,
and
Bubba Wallace
so
is
good here.
So good. I was just literally just going to say that. The way Bubba's been good here, wouldn't surprise me if Tyler Reddick is finally pushing that top 5. I think a win is a little far-fetched, barring, things can happen. You can get a late race. We saw several years ago, decade ago or two, we saw a late race restart where Clint Boyer wiped out the top 2 or 3 cars, and I think it was like Newman went on to win or something. So you can have a late race restart and something happens, and if you're running 4th or 5th and in the right spot, sure. But Reddick needs to be running top 5s first before I think we can finish there. Think about him finishing off a win here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't expect him to be fast enough in practice or qualify. He might have a good qualifying effort, but I don't see him having a car fast enough to win. But hey, I wouldn't be surprised with as good as that team is racing right now if they do. One thing I do like, we talk about Martinsville and we talk about how boring the racing can be in this next gen car. One thing I do like about Martinsville, though, is that it brings to light some of the other mid to lower tier guys. Talking about last fall, we saw SVG fringe top 10 performance. We've seen Todd Gilliland, our boy Todd Gilliland, last 5 races here. He's finished 9th, 10th, 26th, 13th, and 10th.
Yep.
Like, he is good at this racetrack. I love being on Todd Gilliland at Martinsville. One of my favorite bets, just like on road courses. We've talked about Bubba Wallace. I wouldn't be surprised if Bubba Wallace won a race here in the Cup Series. He's won a truck race here. He finished 3rd here in the spring race last year, 4th in the spring race before that. Like, he's right on the edge there. But we do know who the favorites are, and it's no surprise. Ryan Blaney is up there. Hendrick is going to be up there. Denny Hamlin has won 6 times here. Like, there's no denying that Denny Hamlin's going to be good this weekend. I haven't looked exclusively at the odds, but I do know that Blaney is pretty much the favorite among sports books. Any reason to disagree with that?
No reason to disagree with that at all. I think the one thing that's a little surprising is Christopher Bell way down there at 9 or 10 to 1. Hamlin at second, I think makes sense, but I honestly could argue for Christopher Bell being second in odds, legitimately. Like I could make an argument for that, especially if you discount Hendrick Motorsports and the struggles they've had at the short flats so far this year, Phoenix and Bowman Gray, and then the struggles they've had at the intermediates as well, with not being quite as good at Vegas and Darlington as they've been in the past. So if you downgrade HMS, I can get to a world where Christopher Bell should be second in the odds, and he's sitting there at 10 to 1, 11 to 1 if you have the Canby books. That seems wild, but there's no doubt Ryan Blaney should be the favorite. The question is who should be second, and I honestly could make a case for Bell over Denny Hamlin. I don't think it's as clear-cut as the odds board is making it out to be, with Hamlin at like 6 and Bell at 10. That seems like way too wide of a gap between those two for me. So I think there's some value in the odds board this weekend early on. But yeah, absolutely, Ryan Blaney should be the favorite. I'm really curious because not only does Chevy have the new body, but we now have the 750, the strakes taken out from under the underbody there to reduce the downforce and create a little bit harder to stick to the ground, which means you need more mechanical grip instead of aerodynamic grip. And Martinsville's always been a mechanical grip place anyway, but just that extra horsepower will do things. So going to be an interesting weekend. And we've always said Blaney's been so good over the long run here that this extra stuff might help him even more. But Christopher Bell's always really good in the long run too. And so is Denny Hamlin, right? These are guys who are just really good everywhere. Christopher Bell, especially long run at like Coda. If you think about that, this could be a really good spot for Christopher Bell. I'm trying to think, I forget Phoenix already. Like, who was the best at Phoenix? Was it Bell and Blaney? Yeah, it was Bell. It was better than Blaney, but Blaney won.
Yep.
The different strategies. Well, Blaney dominated too. It was the two of them, and then it was everybody else, right? So I could
forget that race, Nick.
Yeah, you were trying to forget it. So yeah, I think Bell should probably be number 2.
So if you see this comment here, Bell opened at 17 to 1 on FanDuel.
What the fuck?
Which is that is excessive.
Yeah, I'm gonna take him 10 to 1 right now. Actually,
you know what? The guy's odds that I am surprised by, and we talked about him earlier, so maybe it shouldn't be surprising, but Chastain's sitting at 50 to 1. Keselowski's at 50 to 1. Like, those guys for long shots, even Bubba Wallace at 33 to 1. I don't mind sprinkling on those. I haven't made any bets. I don't plan to until I get back home. But those guys are definitely have my eye.
You said Wallace and who else?
Bubba at 33, and then we got Chastain and Keselowski at 50.
I'm not really sold on Chastain. Obviously, he had that good performance in the second race last year, but Trackhouse, struggling so far this year, just like the rest of the Chevy crew outside of Spire. I haven't really seen race winning speed from Ross at Martinsville. I mean, I've seen top 5 speed, but I've never seen race winning speed from him.
You know what's wild is Ty Gibbs sitting at 22 and then Bubba at 33.
Yeah.
Give me that matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I full disclosure, I just bet Christopher Bell 10 to 1. I know there's an 11 to 1 at the Canby books. Let me check the score. It's not pulling up on the action odds board right now.
God, I hate that name for a sports book.
I don't have it open, or not that I don't have it, but I'm not logged in, so it's not set to my states. That's why it's not showing the score. The score does have odds up. They have Christopher Bell at 12 to 1. So I'm going to add more at the score. I might end up moving the line there, but if it's still there after I bet it, I will track it. But I'm absolutely betting both these Bell bets. And I just need to log in. I hate that it's making me do the password. So that's what happens when I check on NASCAR for the first time in the week. Mm-hmm. I was trying to get my chess article out today. It'll be out tomorrow, but I did a lot of work for it. I'm really excited about this chess article. I think it's going to be awesome. The Big Chess Tournament is starting this weekend. It'll run for the next 3 weeks. What is my okay, the score. My nice huge limits of $20. But I did just bet.
God.
Did I bet Briscoe or did I bet Bell? Okay, I bet Bell. They're both 12-1 and they're both CB, and all of a sudden I did a double take. So yeah, I bet Bell 12-1 at the score, 10-1 at FanDuel. Also, I don't have Bet365 odds up. Let me check on those. They're not up yet for some reason. So yeah, I like Bell. I think he should be second to Blaney.
Yeah, I haven't ran any of my numbers, but I know for a fact Bell's going to pop in there.
I don't know for a fact. I just know anecdotally I like Bell. This is not a model-based bet. This is a Nick knowledge-based bet.
There we go. Yeah, you mentioned Phoenix. Obviously, that's the closest comparison that we've ran at so far this year. Obviously, these tracks are quite different. You know, like when we're analyzing Phoenix, Martinsville is definitely a long, big. What do I want to say here? A distant track, comparable track. But when we look at Martinsville, we kind of weigh Phoenix a little bit more. Would that be correct? Than we would where we weigh Martinsville at Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Because it's like one direction versus the other direction. Yes, I see exactly what you're saying. Let me pull up my track similarity weights from Phoenix. I haven't run my Martinsville track similarity weights, but Phoenix was what? Race 3 of the season? Race 4? It was race 4. So that'd be 7, 8, 9, 0. So 760. Yeah, here it is. So last year, yeah, I had Richmond is the least similar to Phoenix, and I think that makes a lot of sense with the tire wear. Iowa is the second least similar, but Martinsville, Gateway, and Loudon were all relatively similar to Phoenix. So I think when you're looking at Martinsville going the other way, I wouldn't necessarily say Gateway because it's a little bit higher horsepower, and actually it did diverge from Martinsville a bit. But I think Loudon and Phoenix, so New Hampshire and Phoenix, are probably the two comps I would look at the most. With New Hampshire, of course, also have really similar banking and a similar shape, even though it's a bigger shape. A version of Martinsville, it's still somewhat paper clippy shaped. Like it's not as like long on the straights, but it still has like your straights and then your 180s, and it's really flat. So I think New Hampshire and Phoenix are the two best comps for Martinsville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Matt made a good point here. Bell's pit crew makes you love him even more. He's they've been on fire.
Yeah. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna look at the score here and see if the odds have moved. They've not. All right. I'm gonna track it at 12 at the score, but put in my pick note. I love 10 as well. It might not even be up. Yeah, it's up. Here it is. Winner, Christopher Bell. The score 12-1. And I'll track it for my 0.1 unit that I could get it on. And then I'll track 10-1 for the rest of it. We'll add more at 10-1. Part of me wants to wait for Bet365, but I'm not going to wait for Bet365. And then I will put 0.15 units, the rest. All right. In for a quarter unit on Christopher Bell in the app there, tracked.
It's always fun when we make live bets on Stacking Dennys.
Yeah. No, I love Christopher Bell this weekend. To me, especially adding in that pit crew stuff, to me he definitely should be second to Ryan Blaney.
Yeah, him or Hamlin. I
Absolutely.
I don't think you can argue either of them. But yeah, especially if the Hendrick issues continue, it just brings those guys up even more, right? Because if Hendrick is once again lower on speed than normal, theoretically, that's just going to bump everybody above them that was fractionally below them before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know where Bell qualifies in the order this weekend. I haven't seen the order, but I do know he was on the pole here last year. I don't see the order on J-Ski right now, but one good thing is we don't get the 66 car at Martinsville this week.
Oh, thank God. Is the entry list out? I assume it's just the 36 charter cars?
Nope, it's 37. We got Austin Hill in the 33.
Okay.
But who else you like this weekend at Martinsville?
I mean, you already mentioned him. Todd Gilliland. I think Ryan Preece is always strong here. Josh Berry is usually really good here. Some of these guys that are very track-specific specialists tend to perform pretty well here. So I think those are probably like the three offbeat names you would look at. But I'm looking for RFK to kind of just have another strong weekend, because outside of the JGR 2311 complex, and we know this is Reddick's strongest track, if HMS has taken a little bit of a step back here, where does that leave? I mean, obviously Penske is going to be good, but like, where does that leave everybody else? I think RFK Racing has a really good chance to put several guys into the top 10, if not all three cars, at least two of them.
What's interesting with RFK is, look at Keselowski and his recent performance here at Martinsville, the next gen era. He has not been good at all. Last 7 races here, one finished better than 20th, and it was a 9th in the fall race of 2024, but he led 170 laps in that race.
Yeah, he led the most laps, I was going to say.
Yeah, Buescher also has not been very good. Last 3 races, 29th, 24th, 30th. He does have an 8th place finish in 2023, but outside of that, that's his only top 10 in the next gen era. Preece, a little bit better. Actually, quite a bit better than those two.
I was going to say quite a bit.
3 top 10s in the last 4 races here, and then his outsider was a 14th there in 2024.
And we even remember with Preece at the tail end of that Stewart-Haas Racing career, when they existed, they were not good, period. But Preece was still really good at Martinsville and actually led the most laps in the 2023 Martinsville race that you were at because of Malazzi, the purple Stacking Dennys truck.
There we go.
And that's so long ago, but holy shit. But you were there, and Preece led, or I don't know if you stayed for the Cup race, but you were at least there that weekend. I was watching Kyle Kirkwood win at Long Beach, but Preece led the most laps that race. I think he ended up losing a lot of track position, either on a pit cycle stop strategy. I don't know if it was what it was, but he led the most laps there in a Stewart-Haas car.
Let's see here. Who else you want to talk about for Martinsville?
Let's talk about the road course, guys.
Yep.
AJ Allmendinger hasn't been as amazing here lately, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. He used to be a lot earlier in his career. Really good at Martinsville. Last year, 23rd and 28th. But SVG, like you said, popped in that second Martinsville race, and that's the mold we've been looking at. The Juan Montoyas, the AJ Allmendingers, the Marcus Ambroses, those guys who have also been very good at Martinsville in the past.
So I'll have to go on to iFantasy Race to see what happened to SVG last spring. But as I said before, 14th last fall for him. He finished 8th in stage 2. He also finished 12th here in 2024 fall race with Collick in that 16 car. So SVG could be a sneak, like, depending on where his top 10 odds end up, I might be throwing some money on SVG top 10 this weekend.
There you go. I don't hate that at all. Just depends on what the odds are, of course. But yeah. Todd Gill and SVG, Preece, Berry, a lot of those guys that we talk about, I think are going to just kind of potentially pop again.
Let's see here. Kind of just going down the list here of recent performances here at Martinsville. Again, talked about Bubba. I really like Bubba this weekend. What about a guy that was awful last week but's been very good here at Martinsville, Joey Logano? What are your expectations for him this weekend?
He'll be strong. He could potentially contend for the win for sure. Mm-hmm. We've seen him out front in Martinsville in the past before. There's no reason to think that couldn't happen again.
And Cindric's another guy that does not have a great track history here. Got a question here. Is Cindric another snarky play for DFS? Certainly possible. Obviously, can't make any DFS calls here on Monday. But Cindric, he has a 4th place finish here in 2024, 9th place in 2023, 15th here last fall. Cindric, with the way that team's running and it being a Penske car, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he was a top 10 car either. I think once you get past like the uber favorites here at Martinsville, there's a decent chunk of guys that you can put from 5th to 15th, and they're all kind of just there. And it's going to depend on the final restart and where they end up there on who finishes top 10.
I agree. Real quick, total sidetrack. Me being an insano. I was trying to dig through some results and because I was looking at, was it 2023 with Malazzi and whatever, and I came across this year's Truck Series standings. First and second race of the season, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ran both truck races, completed the 69 challenge.
Yeah.
But then I had to look. Second and third races of the Xfinity Series, I'm just going to call it that. Ross Chastain started, completed the 69 challenge. Second and third races of the IndyCar season, Alexander Rossi completed the 69 challenge. So every series, first time I think ever, every series has had a 69 completion, and they've all been within the first 4 races of those series.
You know what would be great is if Fox acknowledged the 69 challenge on air. That's like we just have to just keep tweeting at them until they finally do.
Or the 6-7 challenge, huh? These days, but we're old, so it's the 69 challenge for us.
Yeah,
we're not Gen Alpha or whatever it is, where it's 6-7. But no. Sorry, that was a total sidetrack distraction while I was looking up results.
All right, you got anything else from Martinsville before we get to our picks?
Honestly, not a whole lot.
Martinsville's Martinsville, ain't it?
I've been full basketball brain, and then today I was full chess brain. So yeah, Martinsville's Martinsville. I don't think this, especially this package and stuff, the horsepower will help, but Martinsville's a mechanical grip track, so the aero changes aren't going to matter as much, maybe a little bit, but the horsepower, I think, in this case will have more effect than the aero changes, whereas at Darlington, it was probably a little more aero, the removing the strakes from the underbody, the decreasing spoiler, as well as the horsepower, but I would have given more of the edge to the aero side of things there. Whereas here it's such slow, flat, mechanical grip that it's going to be a lot more, I think, on the horsepower side of things that'll matter. So spinning the tires coming off the corners and things like that, which will create a little more tire wear, but I don't expect Martinsville to be largely different.
Yeah, same page as you when it comes to that. I'm hoping for better racing, but as we've learned these last few years at Martinsville, I'm just prepared to be disappointed and have a relatively boring race coming up. Especially, being sandwiched between Darlington and Bristol doesn't help Martinsville's case of being an exciting race, just because of, we just came off of a good race at Darlington. We're going to have a great race at Bristol next week, and now you're going to get kind of a meh at Martinsville. But it is what it is. Martinsville is what it is, and we'll still analyze it as we do every week for every race. So
absolutely. Real quick though, we need to sneak Stacking Dennys into Malazzi's wiki.
Ooh.
We need to say, his first race in his first
what multiple
race season was funded by the Stacking Dennys listeners.
What made you think of that?
I was looking at those. Remember, because I was saying, it was 2023 when Malazzi raced. He raced 4 races that year. And he had raced 1 race the year before, which was that Mid-Ohio race, where he actually, I think, technically led a lap or didn't, or I think he led a lap on DraftKings, but the official scoring doesn't have him leading a lap, but DraftKings closed with the official scoring of him leading a lap or something, or a fastest lap under like caution. Oh, it was some weird thing where he like got a dominator point for something, but didn't actually get it in the race. But 2023, he raced 4 races that year, and it was just the whole thing of Martinsville 2023 was the race that you were at because of the Stacking Dennys, and I was at the Kyle Kirkwood thing because I was trying to talk about Priest having led that most laps in that Cup race that year in that particular spring Martinsville race.
Obviously, I'm on his wiki page now. I didn't know this. He previously had worked at Domino's as a delivery driver. He was fired for having too many speeding tickets.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome. Oh shit! All right, getting to our picks.
So here's his wiki though. Malazzi was able to compete in more races in the 2023 season. The season, according to Malazzi, was precarious. His debut for the season came at Martinsville for AM Racing. We should put in a Stacking Dennys sponsored truck in a deal where he was moved from an initial ride from Rayon Brothers Racing to a lack of owner's points for RBR's entry. Right, so like he finished last after the truck's battery, suffered issues, but we need that in there. And that was like the rain race and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We need to slip Stacking Dennys into that part.
We need a picture of the purple truck on this page. I mean, obviously the Outback truck looks amazing, but
it does. But we need the purple truck on that Wikipedia page. We need to slip Stacking Dennys into the paragraph itself.
Yes.
His debut for the season came at Martinsville for AM Racing in a Stacking Dennys sponsored truck through a deal where he was moved from an initial ride. See, that's perfect. I made it flow perfectly. That's what we need.
There we go. Submit the edit.
There you go.
Nice. All right. Picks to win. You and I are in a bit of a cold streak.
Yes.
We haven't picked a winner this year. And the last 2 races, none of our guys have finished top 10. They also haven't finished worse than 15th, though. So we're not getting awful results. But we need to get on and get a win here. My turn to go first, I believe. I got to take Blaney. I think it's going to be hard for me to see anybody beat him. I think he's the best car on long runs, and outside of
give me the pit stops, give me Christopher Bell having good stops, and Brian Blaney's lug nut falling off.
I was just going to say I could only make a case for Hamlin or Bell here. I don't want to take Hendrick. So I'm on Blaney. You're on Bell. That's the third time you've taken Christopher Bell.
I know. And you said last year I took him a bunch, especially I had 3 or 4 races in a row where I took him at one point.
Yeah. Now, this could be a signal for his win because the first time you picked him, he finished 3rd. The second time you picked him, he finished 2nd. Third time he gets the win.
Let's go.
We shall see. 36 for 36. I gained a point on you this week. I had Ty Gibbs. He had 33 points. You had Chase Briscoe, who ended up with 32 points. So total for the year now, you're still 76 above me. I don't know what I want to do with this race, 36 for 36. Part of me wants to go Priest. Part of me wants to go Gilly. And I literally have no idea. Man, this is tough because Martinsville is also a race where you could pick up a bunch of stage points with one of the top guys, Yep,
exactly.
But it's also somewhere where I'm not going to take a Blaney because I don't think he's going to qualify well enough. I think Bubba could be a really good pick here, but I'm concerned about his qualifying spot after his bad finish last week. I think that could hurt him as far as stage points go. So I don't know if I want to burn a Bubba here. So I think I'm going to go with a guy that is qualifying better than he has. I'm going with Priest. I'm taking Priest.
The Bowman Gray winner as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in thinking about, I'm talking about for bets, Ty Gibbs and Chase Briscoe, because if you remember Bowman Gray, the Chevys started, Larson led a bunch, and then Briscoe passed him, but then Larson led, and then faded, and then Byron faded, and then Briscoe passed both of the fading HMS guys. Then Ty Gibbs passed Briscoe at the end there to win that first stage or whatever you want to call it. So I'm a little interested in Briscoe and Gibbs from a betting perspective, but I don't think this is a spot for 36 for 36. So I'm kind of interested in the Toyotas here. The problem is I'm interested in them everywhere.
Right. Especially right now.
Yeah. So I'm interested in fading the Chevys, at least the HMS and Trackhouse Chevys, until they show us they've gotten their shit together. I'm obviously not using SVG. I already used Gibbs, by the way, at Coda anyway. So it's a moot point, but it's really tough to say. But I'm just going to go with Ryan Preece.
Sticking with Preece?
He's the one I feel the most confident in.
By the way, I'll get to this in a second. Never mind. So you're going Preece. I'm obviously on the same board, but now I kind of want to switch my pick to Gilly to be different from you.
Places. You're more than welcome to. I'm going with Preece.
Ah, man.
I just like that you can use Gilly at super speedways and stuff.
I know. I'm switching to Gilly. I'm sticking with Gilly. I'll let you have Preece, but I'm going to go Gilly. Gilly finished 12th at Phoenix. Obviously has good history here. Gilly also had a 10th place stage finish at Phoenix.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gilly here, but obviously I think the Preece pick is solid. Getting to our way too early DraftKings picks, both of us cashed last week.
Yo.
Which I don't remember the last time that happened. I actually got a win with Hamlin, Byron, Reddick, Kez, Zane Smith, and Gilliland. 324.55 in the $3 contest, cash for $6. And then you ended up at 295.10 cash for $5 with
nice.
Hamlin. Wait, shit. Was that your lineup with Byron or was that mine? Did you have Hamlin?
Hold on.
I think you had Hamlin.
I'm pulling up. Media. My way too early lineup was Briscoe. Wait, no, it's Pennzoil 400. My way too early lineup was Hamlin, Keselowski, Jones, Briscoe, Zane, Cindric.
Yep. So you ended up with 295.10 cash for $5 in the $3 contest. So for way too early, we were both on it early. And obviously, you hitting the qualifier, you were on it late too. I did decent in the mini max. I won $100 back on the 75. So I feel like that's a good return.
There you
go. And the reason I hedged and took no on the Gibbs top 10 was because I went 100% Reddick with all 150 lineups that I did. And then I went 84% Gibbs. So I was doing one of those situations where if he didn't finish top 10, I hedged against myself in DFS, but also I could hit both. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, obviously, it's way too early for the way too early because they don't have prices and stuff. But be interesting to see who's priced where. I have a feeling Hendrick will still be priced high enough that there will be a lot of value this weekend.
One last final question. Hard to write off Hendrick here. Does skill mean more than speed here?
To a degree, I would say.
I was going to say definitely not as much as Darlington. And I would argue with this next-gen car, I would say skill is even less.
Yeah, I can argue that as well. Darlington's a really skillful track. And we saw at Bowman Gray which is a quarter-mile track, those Hendrick cars are falling off like crazy. I think the car, like getting mechanical grip here is everything. You need good mechanical grip at Darlington. And Hendrick Motorsports showed they lost that over the course of a long run at Bowman Gray. They lost that over the course of a long run at Phoenix. They're not generating the mechanical grip they need to. And I don't know what specifically it is over the long run, but they're clearly their long run speed is down on the shorter flat tracks this year. I don't know what's causing them to burn their tires. Maybe it's too much mechanical grip. Maybe it's being too good early in the run. I don't know. But there is absolutely a skill technique, but for sure. That's why we see guys like AJ Allmendinger and those road course guys pop here. But Martinsville is an equalizer in that regard, but you still need a really good car if you're going to get a long green flag run here, which Martinsville will usually produce some long green flag runs, even if it can be a bunch of cautions as well. But especially in this modern era, we've seen more long green flag runs at Martinsville than, in the, let's be real, in the era where mechanical and tire and engine issues would happen a lot more often. So plus the drivers weren't as skilled back then. They didn't have the training methods they have now with simulators and physical fitness training and all that stuff, right? These drivers are on nutrition programs, physical fitness programs, acuity, speed testing programs, training their reflexes and all that stuff. We're in a whole different era from 20, 30 years ago where Martinsville could be wreck fests. So we don't really see wreck fests at Martinsville. We can. It's not that it can't happen. It's just less frequently these days. So we'll get those long green flag runs. When you have a long green flag run, even at Martinsville, you need a good car.
Mm-hmm. And we're not writing off Hendrick completely. We're just saying that as dominant as they have been at Martinsville lately, I think they're going to take a step back. And I think we saw it at Phoenix. Like Larson finished third at Phoenix. He didn't lead a single lap. William Byron finished seventh at Phoenix. That's not a good Phoenix race for him. They're good. They're still good.
Yes.
Just they are not.
They're like
as
fourth.
Good as
they're like
they've been.
Fourth to 10th good instead of first to sixth good.
Exactly. For sure. There we go. All right. You got anything else?
Man, I got to celebrate. I had a good weekend.
Hell yeah, you did. Hell yeah.
I won a qualifier, Stacking Dennys / action / running hot / rotogrinder / fantasy lab subscriber here in the show today. Won 40 grand. It's a good weekend. It's a good celebration. So really, really stoked because I put in a shitload of work into the model this offseason and not just practice flags, but like the extra flags metrics, and then really refining my model, really refining my process. You remember 2024, right? I had my worst season ever. A lot of it was really bad luck, but my trajectory in the second half of that season was just down.
Mm-hmm.
Since that low point, my trajectory is basically just back up to where I was, which is really cool. I've put a lot of work into not having to experience that downswing again. So, and then especially this offseason, it's already shown. I'm up like 15 units in the first 6 weeks of the season, which I know is only 2.5 units per week. But remember, you're going to have losing weeks. So the winning weeks have been really good, solid 8 unit wins. And 15 units every 6 weeks means if you multiply that by 6, right? Because it's a 36-week season. 15 times 6 is 90. Like that's a 90 unit season that I'm on pace for.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to, I haven't really been focusing on qualifiers. I'm going to have to now because I want to join you in the World Fantasy Racing World Championship now.
Yeah. I don't remember. So it's weird because DraftKings only has the page up from last year's. They don't actually have what the structure is for this year's. I've been like Googling it all day and couldn't find anything, but
nothing. God.
Yeah. But last year's was 100 qualifiers. I don't know if there's a cap on the number. Yeah. Players qualify up to 5 times last year. So I think I'm still going to try to get a couple extra entries. I'm not going to go ham. I haven't been going ham. I think I maxed the $27 last week and I got like 5 in this week. This is the first time I entered the $777 was this past weekend. And I hit it right there. Like first time I entered the 777, I won. So I'm clearly up like already $1,000, or it's not $1,000, $5,000 in like expectation, probably more than that. I think I've entered less than $1,000 in contests for qualifiers, and yeah, like 270 plus 7. Yeah, so I'm about in for a little more than $1,000, but one qualifier is a $6,000 entry, right? So I'm up like just under $5,000 in expected value already from these. So I'm not going to sit here and try to throw a bunch more money at it since I already have one bullet, and that's really all I cared about doing was getting a bullet in because I thought it'd be fun to, 2015 I got 2, and then I think 2017 I got 1, and then I basically stopped playing after the 2018 season. And in 2018 I focused on tournaments, and that was when they came out with the first $5,000 contest ever. I think it was called I forget what it was called, but I won the first ever $5,000 entry fee NASCAR tournament, and then I stopped.
God,
2019 was basically when I stopped playing DFS for a while because of all the stuff that went on in my life.
5,000 for an entry would make me puke. I've gotten in. I forget which high stakes one I got in at Daytona one time, but God, $5,000 for an entry is
and I won it.
Balls of steel.
Yeah, I was so happy. It was sweaty for sure. I mean, I obviously I had the funds and the means and the ability to do so, but it was still the most I'd ever entered in one contest.
Yeah,
it was crazy. Yeah, but you got to take your shots every once in a while, and I figured my edge was really good, super good back then. I think it's super good now too because, I mean, subscriber just hit 40,000, and Daytona 500 subscriber hit $60,000, ties for second place, I think it was, or I guess two people split first, and then he tied, and then he got like sold third, or I don't remember the exact details, but he got like $60,000 in the 500, the Daytona 500, and then just last week the same guy hit for $18,000. So like 3 of this first 6 weeks, I've had people hitting just massively huge DFS results, and I won a qualifier. So, and I'm not even playing a ton of high volume, like we talked about. I'll max entry the super speedways, but mostly I'm just going to stick to higher dollar stuff. And that's what I've done is I've played a handful of entries in the higher dollar contests and had some good results so far.
Mm-hmm. One last plug. How do we get your flags?
actionnetwork.com/pro. It's part of the pro package, but that gets you access to everything that Action Network does, whether it's football, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, hockey, college sports, NASCAR, MMA, golf, like it gets you access to everything. So if you're interested in other sports as well, that's what matters. But my practice flags come out usually a couple hours after practice every weekend. That's the real big moneymaker there for the people, I think.
Perfect. All right. Anything else from you before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome.
Nice. All right. Hour and a half episode.
There we go. Good luck to everybody this weekend at Martinsville. Hopefully we get a good race. I'm hopeful that it's going to be decent for Martinsville. And then we are on to Bristol. But is there a break in between there? Yeah, we get a week off next week. Martinsville, then we got a week off.
Nice. Yeah, that's true. And then it's Bristol during the IndyCar Long Beach Grand Prix weekend. Oh, boy.
Kyle Kirkwood.
Well, you know that. This weekend they're at Barber, which is not Kyle Kirkwood weekend.
Isn't that like an awful track too?
It has its moments, but I would say it's largely a really hard track to pass at, but it can have moments. If you're much better than a guy and you have really good grip and you can take some high speed corners really, really well, it can create some insanely daring passes, which are super exciting moments. So it'll be a lot of nothing sprinkled with moments of holy shit, which I think both makes for exciting but not exciting racing as well. So I always think Barber is one of those tracks where I just feel like betting it is one of those ones where I don't want to bet it early. I want to just kind of wait and see the starting lineup and see the tire strategies that everybody's going to take, because you can start on either the alternates or the primaries, and then make my bets accordingly after practice and qualifying.
Perfect. All right. That's all I got for this week. So everybody enjoy the race, and we'll see you guys next week.
See y'all.
Later.